welcome to the What the Shuck podcast. The goal of the What the Shuck podcast is to provide a platform to positive and influential people of Kentucky and Appalachia. My next guest is Mr. Taylor Watkins. He will be returning for his second time and is a close friend of the podcast. And Taylor has been in North Carolina and has been doing some community work through some breweries and through some farmers markets and places that are just all about community. And that's what this guy that I have on here today is all about. And not only is he about building communities, he's also an absolutely incredible artist and musician. So thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate you as always, man.
So, dude, we're actually here at Old North Bar.
Yeah.
And essentially, we're de facto the reason why we became friends.
Exactly. A little full circle podcast today.
Yeah, so it was really cool to, I was talking to Wes about doing some stuff here, and he was like, yeah, dude, I was just talking to Watkins, and he was talking about you, and I was like, that's weird, because I literally just scheduled a podcast with Watkins here at Greyline.
It's all connected.
Yeah, and he was like, dude, I love him so much. And so it's really fun to get to talk with you. We did an event when you were here living this summer, and we kind of, well, was it this summer?
Last year around this time.
Yeah.
So right before
okay,
this
so
summer.
winterish.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went, when did you actually leave to go to North Carolina?
So we headed out around the beginning of May.
Okay.
So started out, we hit the beach, we were in Wilmington, played some shows out there that kind of started off the big tour that I did there last summer. And then we stayed for 4 months and left around September. And yeah.
So kind of tell us a little bit about what your influence was for that, because I know that, like we were talking about for a brief period, was about how you're all about building a community. And I know that when we were talking before you left, you were talking about how you just felt that North Carolina was the place to be. So what was it that exactly drew you to want to build that community there?
Yeah, so we touched on it a little bit on the last podcast, but as you know, maybe some listeners might not know, but my partner and I, we've been living in a van for 3 years now. And we've traveled the country. We've taken jobs anywhere from Idaho to Maine, played shows now in over, I think, 15 states. So really just been adding to the list of states that we're traveling to, and really just using this time traveling as a kind of an experiment to see where we want to live, kind of what communities have really meshed with my overall spiritual journey as well as my musical journey. And that's kind of what led us to North Carolina. We've had fun everywhere we've went. We've enjoyed traveling everywhere, but all of my family lives in the South as well as her family. We kind of want to stay around this area, but we wanted to at least find an area that felt like our own. And that's kind of what Western North Carolina has been for us. So when deciding where to go last summer, we said, what's been our favorite place so far? And North Carolina was both of our answers. So I booked a huge tour there, and we said, let's just stay in the state and really get to know it. So that's what we did.
So you said something about time travel. How did you all figure that one out?
What was it?
You said time travel.
Our time traveling.
I know.
Oh.
Yeah, how'd you figure that one out? That takes some performance enhancing drugs or some pretty impressive technology. So how'd you figure that one out?
You know, that's just been a little bit of the music, a little bit of letting go, and just a little bit of meditation, you know?
Also, if you can't tell, Taylor and I are full of shit. Actually, I have a couple stickers on the back of my computer that you gave me.
Yeah.
About just like consciousness and just like
time is an illusion.
Yeah.
I know you caught me off guard for a second. I didn't know how full of shit we were going to be for a second.
Yeah. You were like, wait, what?
I was like, wait, no, not actually time traveling. But yeah, no, but for real, honestly, and what I've been doing recently, the new songs I'm working on, and just with the traveling, I mean, it really has been a huge, crazy mental experience, spiritual, psychedelic, whatever you want to call it.
So you said psychedelic just now, and you refer to yourself as like psychedelic Southern, if I'm not
correct.
Yeah,
trying to coin the genre psychedelic Southern.
I think that's an awesome way to explain yourself, because it's very thoughtful, it's very mind-opening, it's expansive music, but it's like true to the roots of Southern music.
Exactly, and I would say most of the influences that you'll find in my music come from alternative rock and even some psychedelic folk, like from back in the 70s and 80s. Just really acoustic-centric music, and then the lyrics for me are what I would like to think of as the psychedelic mind expanding, mind opening side of things. And that's really where I try to just stay natural with my lyrics and refer back to nature and just kind of the experience that I've been going through over the past 3 years, let alone through this whole lifetime.
Kind of remind me of like Van Morrison / Bob Dylan / Kings of Leon.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I'm never like one to compare artists, but it's like those are like I don't even know if those are artists that you enjoy or.
Oh yeah,
but
it's all been done too. I mean, everything's a remix at the end of the day. Like we subconsciously take in our influences. So, I mean, there's got to be a little bit of it all in there. But
I think that it's really interesting for you is that you do put your own spin on it, and like you read a lot.
Yeah.
And you're reading very expensive, like just mind-opening stuff that most people have no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's reflective in the stuff that you're talking about. And it's like, if you listen to a Tyler Childers song, he's like, I was going down White Ass Road, and you're like, I was going to like another dimension. And like, I was like trying to find myself.
Yeah, trying to balance the two of those.
Yeah, and so it's like you're finding it's mind-altering, but at the same time, it's very grounded questions.
Exactly, and the way I like to put my lyrical side is I try to keep it vague enough to where anybody can relate to it, but also deep enough where if it is somebody who wants to almost meditate on the songs, it can really put them back into a grounded state. And so for me, it's like anyone can have fun with my music, anyone can just jam or groove to it if you want, but also if you want to take the narrative side and just kind of get lyrical and deep, the words truly will kind of break you out of the cycles you've been in or kind of just make you take a step back for a second. And honestly, even with the huge travels I did last year, I kind of had to revisit some of my own lyrics and remind myself to, not get too caught up in things every once in a while.
So for artists, I always see that something that's really interesting is as they progress through their career is when they revisit songs. So they're like songs that you have written earlier when you were being a musician that you've like brought back and you're like, hey, I really like that song and maybe I didn't pay enough attention, or do you usually just kind of like once you leave that chapter, do you just leave it there? How does that kind of work for you?
That's a good question. It's kind of hit or miss on every song. On the first and second record, there were some songs that I brought back from years past that kind of reshaped the meaning. And it's like the words stayed the same, but now they're hitting harder almost. So off of the first record, I still play Rainy Days and Sweet Release a lot, and those songs I think are very timeless in the sense that they articulate what I'm going through all the time. Even though I'm progressing and maturing and the traveling and experiences change shape, the words still are very relative and kind of bring you back to the truth and just bring you back to yourself at the end of the day. But even with this new record, the last record, Unbiased Eyes, a lot of those songs I was going through a very, not necessarily difficult time, but just a very introspective kind of was feeling not really a part of things when I lived down in Nashville, was really trying to find how I fit into this whole music scene with the traveling and just where my spiritual journey was taking me. I was trying to see how all this fit together, and that's kind of what I wrote about for the second record. And now that I've played this record for over a year now, it's started to even take new forms and new shapes. And some of these songs, like I said, I re-listened to it again the other day, and I have to take a step back from your own music every once in a while. You can't just listen to yourself all the time. It's hard to even hear your own songs as songs.
Dude, I very rarely even listen to my own podcast.
Exactly.
I'm like, does this sound good enough to edit? Okay, good. See you later. I never am going to listen to it again.
Exactly. And so once I've kind of revisited those, I'm like, oh, wow, like this is almost more relative now than even when I was writing them. And I was telling my partner, she was like asking me, what do you mean? And I'm just like, well, it's almost as if my future self was kind of talking to my past self saying like, hey, you need to write these songs.
Yeah.
It might not make as much sense now, but later down the line, it's hitting even harder.
Dude, I had a podcast that was like episode 7. and it's the only monologue podcast I've ever done. And it was when Kobe Bryant passed away 3 years ago, and it was about the influence that he had had on my life.
Yeah.
And it was like these questions that I was asking myself even then are like things that were like so important to my like development today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so crazy that I asked myself that, because maybe if I didn't, I wouldn't be where I am. And so I think also it's important to go back and listen to that stuff, because you might be like, oh dude, that did pay off, and you might have forgot. And it's just really cool to be able to say, hey man, I had this vision 3 years ago, and today I've made it a reality.
Yeah.
And dude, you just like, how many freaking places did you go tour at when you were in North Carolina?
We ended up playing over 65 shows in 4 months.
And I can remember you telling me like, I'm going to go do this show in North Carolina. Well, not a show, but like a tour in North Carolina. And I'm only going to go to like very organic, community-driven places.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you went to some amphitheaters, and like I said, you played some breweries and you played some farmers markets and stuff like that. I saw like some cool things too, were like that seemed kind of organic and like viral, where like you were playing at like a rest stop and someone was like, holy cow, like this dude's awesome, like holy crap. And so it's just like you were there in North Carolina, and that felt really important. So kind of for musicians, I think that you personally work very, 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 very hard to book a lot of like shows and stuff. And I think you do it in a different way than most people. So like, what would be your advice for musicians that are looking to like not just have a gig, but have like filling gigs like you've been doing? Like, you haven't just been playing music to like, I love music. It's like there's a mission. It's like you are playing music because you love music, but it's also like there's a mission beyond that. Yeah. So kind of like explain that to people and how you kind of came to that.
Yeah, I mean, so I pretty much started heavily playing shows in high school. We started playing almost every weekend around 10 years ago. And, you know, back then, I mean, we were taking any gig that we could. So, I mean, I haven't always had the luxury of, you know, knowing what was going to be fulfilling or knowing what was going to be my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But with the shows, I mean, I was always willing to try just about whatever. So, I mean, we've played festivals to bar gigs to backyard barbecues to now we're playing farmers markets and out on apple orchards and just busking in the city. Pretty much anything from festivals to breweries. But for me, it was really taking this music thing seriously, in a sense that it's not just a hobby, it's my spiritual journey. It's who I identify myself with. It's really the only identifying factor that I think I have is just the music keeping me going. And whether that's through traveling, whether that's through meeting people, whether that's through community-driven events, I've really just watched my message behind the music kind of forward me into these opportunities. And I started realizing when I was living down in Nashville a few years back, I was playing a lot of late night bar gigs, playing a lot of just out there in the drinking scene where there would be packed shows, sometimes sold out shows, but then it wasn't necessarily the right atmosphere that I felt like what I'm trying to say in my songs was getting across. Which there's a time and a place to play music and be background noise sometimes and give people something to groove to. I love those type of shows too. But I had done those for almost 6 years now that I was like, okay, now I need to play some shows that are going to be giving back to me and making me feel wholesome. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I just sat down to book this tour around this time last year and was like, you know, the most fulfilling shows are when I get to see the people helping the community, see the people who are actually involved in shaping the minds of the community around them, and I get to be a part of that and also influence the scene with my music. So like you said, that's kind of where I started playing more farmers markets and playing just more festivals in smaller towns out in North Carolina, where I knew when I talk on the microphone, people are actually more willing to listen. And not as much going against the grain as I was at some of my past shows. But I mean, honestly, there's been shows this summer even where I've had to learn from them too. So any advice I would give to people nowadays who are doing that is go play the shows. You know, if you're just starting out, you know, you got to get your foot in the door somewhere. You got to make a name for yourself. And I think once you start playing more and more shows, you'll know in your gut and in your conscious, like, what is right for you. And you'll find where you fit in. But for me in my spiritual journey, that's kind of what has led me here today.
Well, dude, we like we mentioned earlier, we're here in Greyline and over at Old North, and it's like you all did the event with Chris and Family Dog and Sunmates. Is that who else was?
Yep.
Okay. And then there was maybe one other band or act.
I'll think of it here in a second.
But it was just like, Chris is a close friend of mine and huge advocate for just expanding the music scene. And I don't know if you've listened to his new album with Sunday, but it's just like, you were talking about how you were like trying to maybe talk to a more expansive community and group of people that were wanting to listen and like wanting to be enriched. And it's very interesting to hear the music they made on their first album versus like what they're doing now. And it just sounds like it's so much more fulfilling music that they're making. And it's not like that they weren't like Nick and I did an episode a couple days ago, and it was like we were talking about how as an artist it's so important to keep in mind that it's where you are in that moment is what's going to influence the music that you're writing and what you're talking about. And so if you're an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old, it's probably a little bit more likely that you're going to be talking about like, I had a good time at the party last night. But as like you get older and you get like, he's like, I'm 37 now, and he's like, I've had a kid, and like, he's like, so I've grown up a lot.
Exactly.
And he's like, so that's the stuff I talk about. And it's like, whatever is important to you in that moment, it's kind of what you capture.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like you see some of your favorite artists, you know, change what they're doing, and you wonder, oh, I wish they would go back to making that type of music, which I'm not talking about selling out and making like terrible pop music or anything like that, but you start to realize that like the themes change, the lyrics change, and it's like once you get older and you start reflecting on some of the music you listen to, you really start to see the growth in some of these artists, and you're like, oh wow, I totally understand, because now I'm going through that. And when you're a kid listening to that, you want everything to be fun and rainbows and sunshine all the time, but it's not always like that. And so, I mean, as much as I like to make fun music for people to dance to and have a good time with, it's like, it is very introspective. And as the years go on and as I've traveled more and more, it is, you know, getting a little deeper. I'm not trying to make anyone cry, you know, but it's also too, I want people to at least be able to reflect enough that it has a deeper meaning in their own life.
Well, dude, I think you make groovy tunes that you want to move and dance to, but also are thought-provoking. And so while we're talking about that, let's hear one. You down?
Let's do it. I'll get a new one if that's all right.
We would love that.
Okay. This is going to be on a future third record. Don't know when that will happen, but this one's called Coyote, Passenger Seat. sleeps on the dash. I think we'll stay in these Blue Ridge mountains to where was forget the past. When you feel it, say something. There's no truth in saying nothing. Someone's love is clearly coming. You can't leave. And I've learned through all this running that as much as I was chasing something, there was always a home inside of me. I was right there with you humming that song that you were always lost in, and you're still right beside me in the passenger seat, in the passenger seat.
All right, dude.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of tell us a little bit of
what about like the influence to write that song? And it's on your third album. You've been writing music for, what would you say, like 15 years?
I mean, since I was honestly like 5 years old.
Okay,
so.
so it's like, kind of walk us through how you've progressed as a songwriter and what was the influence for kind of that song?
Yeah, we touched on it in the first podcast we did, that I really just believe that songs will come to you when you need them to, and questions, like you said when you did the monologue podcast, you kind of start asking yourself things. The world kind of reveals themes and ideas to you that at the time you're not really sure what to do with them, but you know that there's something there. And with every song I write, I never try to force it. I never sit down with the intention of writing a song. I just play until something feels right and try to go from there. And with the travels that we did through North Carolina this summer, a lot of things have happened in the last 3 years living in a van. When we first started traveling in the van, we were traveling with two of our kittens that we have, and they live with us in the van. And unfortunately, when we lived in Maine a couple years ago, one of our kittens passed away, and her name was Coyote, and she used to ride on the dashboard when we were driving in the van all the time. And really, it was a huge point in our life. Just anybody losing a loved one or a pet or a family member, I mean, they know what it's like to lose someone you love, and that had hit us hard. And just having a cat with you traveling in the van, it's like having a partner in crime, you know. So with these travels throughout North Carolina this summer, we spent a lot of time on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which overlooks the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge Mountains and all that. And so we got to really just spend a lot of time reflecting this year. And I spent a lot of time writing songs on top of mountains. And that was one that came out of nowhere when I was just...
Dude, I would have never guessed that was about a little kitten.
I know, and I won't really share that to a lot of people. I wanted to share that on this podcast, but that just ended up meaning a lot. And so whether you're listening to the song and know what it's about, or you have no idea, the chorus, it says, when you feel it, say something. There's no truth in saying nothing.
Yeah.
When someone's love is clearly coming, you can't leave. And to me, it just means, you know, I think, again, a lot of my music really touches on that gut feeling you have. And I think that that's your one true guide in life. You know, people have passions that lead them. People have just a conscience that leads them, or their beliefs. But I think deep down, we're all talking about the same thing, that gut feeling. And when you feel something strongly, I think you owe it to your loved one, or owe it to the people around you, or if it's someone you know you love, then you owe it to them to tell them. And that's what that song's about, is just being honest, not only with yourself, but the people you spend your time with. And no matter what you're going through, no matter if it is losing a loved one or if it's a newfound love, it's worth sharing. And I think that if you're not willing to be open about it, then you're going to miss out on some wonderful opportunities. And that's what that song's about. And it's honestly been one of my favorite songs I've written. And I'm demoing out the third record right now. I don't know when it'll be released, but I think that will be the single that comes out eventually.
I really like that song. We touched on it a little bit earlier about how you when you write a song, it's like there's a deeper meaning to every single song that you write, but you write it vague enough to where many people can digest it and relate to what you're talking about. So like when you just said that was about my cat, I'm honestly not even a huge cat guy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I wanted to be best friends with that cat now. Like if it was cool enough that you wrote a song about it, like it must be a cool cat. So it was just like, I mean, its name was Coyote, so it was cool enough that it was like named after a dog kind of animal. So it's just like, that's incredible. And so with art, there's so many times that people will look at something and be like, this is about that. And it's like, you just don't know it all.
Exactly. And like I said, if people get their own meaning out of it, then that's exactly why I wrote it. I don't want to tell people, no, you're wrong. Like, that's not why I wrote it, because I wrote it for myself.
Some parts it was like, this is exactly what Taylor Watkins meant. And you're like, I don't even care.
Exactly. I mean, if someone wants to say what they think I wrote it about, they might be maybe wrong in the sense of what I had in mind, but if it was able to give them joy in that realm and provide them with their own meaning, then exactly. And I'm not going to judge them for it, as long as they're listening, I guess.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think people should definitely be listening to you. You have an event coming up here at Greyline, so kind of talk us through that a little bit. I know that you're going to be leaving again soon.
Yeah.
So where are you actually going, and then also fill in that event?
So going to be spending the next month here in Lexington. Been doing some fun stuff around here. Got to reunite with some of my favorite musicians and some of our good friends. But I will be headed out back to North Carolina for March and April. So I'll be spending time in a town a little bit east of Asheville called Black Mountain.
Okay.
That's where I've really found what I'd like to think feels closest to home to me right now. Made some really good friends, and we'll actually be renting a place for the first time in 3 years. We're getting out of the van.
Okay.
So we're
no longer down in the van down by the river.
Exactly. Maybe in the future. Well, we know in the future because we're living 2 months in Black Mountain, and then we're actually headed back to Teton Valley, Idaho.
Okay. Oh,
so,
wow.
On the other side of Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Okay.
We're going to be going there, and I've got.
What if the spy balloon pops up?
What was it?
What if a spy balloon pops up?
Oh, I mean, hey, we'll be out enough.
Peace and love, homie.
There's only pretty much just sagebrush and mountains out there, so they'll have to look pretty hard to find me, honestly. But honestly, we love Teton Valley, Idaho so much. We lived there about 3 years ago, and that's kind of what started our traveling journey, and made a really good impression in the music scene out there that we kind of had some opportunities to go back, and I've actually got 2 music residencies that I've booked out there. So every week I'll be playing at 2 different places, and we'll be working out there literally in the middle of the Teton Mountains. So it's really nice it's going to be kind of a breath of fresh air, but also still getting to play music and do what we love. But we'll be doing that for the summer. Okay. And honestly, after that, we do not know where the wind will be taking us after that. We'd like to set our roots in North Carolina, but we're probably going to wait about 2 years to really start looking to buy any land or anything. But with that being said, not really knowing where the road's going to take us, I wanted to, at least while I'm here in Lexington, throw a big event with some homies and just make a big kind of
it's
reunion.
Daniel's birthday, by the way.
Exactly.
And he just released Copperhead today, so.
Yeah, so that'll be coming out at midnight.
Oh yeah, midnight.
Shout out to Daniel Kane. We actually just sold out the Nook in Danville a couple weeks ago. Awesome.
I haven't had the chance to go to that yet, but it looks like a great venue.
It was crazy. They were super supportive. I had never been there before, neither had Daniel. And
that's kind of like his stomping ground, though, in a way, isn't it?
His hometown's about 10 minutes from there.
Yeah.
So
from
it was
Lincoln County, so
kind of a hometown reunion show for him. And surprisingly enough, there was a lot of Watkins fans out there too. So
That's not surprising. When we did that event at Ethereal, there were like 7 people who walked up to me and they're like, "I'm on to here because Watkins is here."
yeah,
And I was like, "How do you know people like that? You don't ever live here long enough." And you're like, "Well, lived here, like went to college.
yeah.
Apparently, you worked at a brewery and they didn't know you weren't 21."
Yeah, exactly. So definitely was really involved in the music scene when I was here, and hopefully left a good enough
Well,
impression.
you were like playing with
Seems
like
to have-
Donnie and like
Donnie, that's where I
Chris,
first met Chris for the first time. One of my best friends, Jordan Ryan, he makes music with Ben Boggs, and basically just that whole scene, I kind of got my foot in the door. That's how I met Brett Horton, who we did the last podcast
Yep.
with. And then just honestly stuck around and started playing there every week, started playing around town every week, and that's kind of where I, not from here, but people started wondering, are you from Lexington? You're in the Lexington music scene all the time. And so spent about 4 years really getting involved, and then moved down to Nashville, and then
Well, you got
started
like
living in the van.
You don't have a Lexington vibe with your aesthetic. I could never rock what you're wearing now. You got like a corduroy shirt on. You got like some beads, and then you have like a Sherlock Holmes hat that
Yeah.
you've tied up at the top. I've never seen it worn like that.
Yeah.
And then you have like some Joe Mixon, or not Joe Mixon, but Joe Burrow rose gold glasses. So like it's just vibes from everywhere.
I don't know where it comes from, but this is how it turned out.
Dude, I love it though. Like that's just like it's perfectly you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, but
It would not match on me, but for you, it matches.
don't sell yourself short. You can rock it. You can rock it. Oh, sorry. You asked me about the event, though. Yeah, so Daniel Kane, as you mentioned, he'll be opening up the show. So what I'm doing on February 25th of this year, of the beautiful 2023 that we've started, we'll be doing what I like to call Lexington Indie Night. So where maybe not as much focus in the Lexington music scene has been on the independent artists and also the kind of new shape genre indie. I don't feel as though there's been a huge focus on it, so I wanted to put together a bill that I thought fitting of, I don't necessarily think that my music is necessarily the typical Lexington, Kentucky sound.
Independent country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to coin my own psychedelic southern indie music realm, and so that's why with this show I really wanted to showcase artists who I thought were also trying to do their own thing. And Daniel Kane, I think, is somebody who I've recently connected with. He came out, and I had him out in North Carolina play a couple shows with me. And we had not met each other. We kind of just had listened to each other's music, had found each other online, and immediately hit it off. He's
so easy to talk to. He's such a great guy.
Yeah,
very fun.
Exactly. He's got very similar ideas with what he's trying to do. It's a very spiritual thing for him as well. So we connected on that realm, and we even had spoken yesterday about doing some more
Probably
stuff.
smoking yesterday too.
We don't talk about that.
Why not? We're trying to legalize here, Kentucky.
Oh yeah, we're getting there. But Daniel, he'll be starting off the show. Then another artist who I've been following for a while now, Buck the Taxidermist.
I love him. Kyle is such a great guy.
I have we've never met in person.
The chord
either.
we're using right now, this chord right here. Word to Buck. Thank you.
There you go. See, and we haven't met in person.
He's
but
such a great guy.
We've had good conversations, and I knew when I was doing this indie night, I've been wanting to do something with Buck for so long, and I reached out to Kyle, and I'm like, okay, I would like to finally get Buck the Taxidermist on a bill. So he'll be going second, I'll be going third, and then we have Lilac and Wicked Peace ending the night. So two very great bands who are...
Gideon and Elizabeth are awesome. I can't remember who else is in that band, but that's a really talented band as well.
Yeah, they're all awesome. I had known some of them when I was going to UK years back. Had actually seen them for the first time. They just posted a poster from 5 years ago of a show they did at the Burl, and that's actually the show that I had first seen them at. And I don't know if I've even seen them since then play. So I was like, okay, I have to get them involved as well. And Wicked Peace, another band where it's just one of those situations
Criminal
where
underrated in the area because it's just not a huge genre.
Exactly.
But they're great.
And another instance where kind of we had been talking to each other on Instagram, said we wanted to do something together, and I think that was again 5 years ago, and we never.
The stars aligned.
Exactly, and then we were going to do something when COVID hit, and then that got canceled. So now it all works out. So the 25th, there's going to be about 7 or 8 independent artist booths set up. So there's anything from pottery, bakeries, people selling honey, to I will even have a poet who will be setting up with a typewriter, and he'll be writing free poetry for people.
Hell
so
yeah.
it's kind of a little bit of everything. It's kind of a grab bag of just mixed media, artist, as well as indie music. So it's going to be a really fun event. But kind of what we were speaking about on the first podcast was me putting myself in the role as an event coordinator rather than always focused on myself being the musician. I will be playing in the middle of the set, but also I really want to just show myself as a host and be the facilitator.
You gotta work the logistics and
Exactly, and I want to create the environment that brings the people out, you know. And one thing I touched on last time that I really am trying to hit home with is my whole goal with all this is to create an environment where people, the audience, the people involved, the artists involved, the vendors, everyone feels vulnerable enough to feel safe and comfortable and also see themselves as an artist. So whether it's somebody who never goes out in the Lexington music scene, they can, you know, show up and be like, wow, this is actually my type of people, you know. These people are accepting of me, and maybe it pushes them to be more artistic, or maybe start playing music for the first time, or maybe they go around to the vendors and buy some art, and that influences them to maybe be more creative in their own life. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, and I really just want that impression to be imposed on the people when they come to these events, and more events in the future that I will throw like this.
well, dude, I mean, we're doing essentially because of the first one that you did. We've had a few different events here through my nonprofit in partnership with like Old North and with Greyline Station. It's like we're doing one in April. That's once again like if you hadn't done the first indie night thing that you did, it just would be like I would have not even known that we could do stuff like this here. I met Wes because we're doing the podcast essentially because you had that event here, and it just showed what people. There's a lot more people than what you think that are just trying to make an impact and trying to do work. And so in April, we're going to be doing an event here, April 15th, that's going to have music that's going to be string and bluegrass focused. And it's going to be called Strings in the Spring.
Awesome.
And so we're just going to be having bluegrass and string focused music. And it's like what you're doing is just trying to provide a platform to not necessarily, you can't really say they're niche, but it's like around here they are. Because like most people want to hear Tyler Childers, Sergio Simpson, Chris Stapleton, Luke Bryan, stuff like that. But it's like, but there are also really incredible musicians that are not that you need to be hearing. And it's just culturally rich, regardless of their delivery.
Yeah.
And we're really fortunate to have that around here, and you've helped to nurse that. And you're not even from here, so I think that's incredible that you've done that. I think that's why we've connected so much and been close friends. But we're coming to the end of this episode of What the Shuck. Where can everybody find your music? Obviously, I love your tunes, but where can people find your first 2 albums that you have out?
So first 2 albums, all of my social media is at the band Watkins. So you can find anything, Facebook, Instagram, at the band Watkins. Everything's under Watkins. So Spotify, iTunes, Google, whatever you listen to music on. We've got some videos on YouTube, can all be found under Watkins. The first album, Inner State of Mind, and the second album, Unbiased Eyes. Those are available everywhere on streaming services. And if you're old school like I am, I sell CDs out the van. We've got some.
You live in a van down by the river.
We've got some new shirts that we just printed, and we're selling those as well. So always reach out online if you'd like to sport any Watkins gear. But like I said, I'm working on a 3rd record. I'll be finishing up some demos of those, and basically, if you'd like to hear them, just ask. That's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't really have any plans of recording any final versions of this 3rd record right now. Really just going to travel this year and kind of be open to what the world presents me. hopefully something will come along and I'll get that single out, like I said. But other than that, just look for me online. That's where I'll be posting everything. I'll be posting a lot of photos from my travels that are coming up in this upcoming year. But I'm just, who knows what the road ahead brings, and I'm excited to be here again with you, and I'm sure we'll do something again in the future.
Well, dude, I appreciate you so much. If you're listening to the What the Shuck podcast, we have some really incredible stuff that's going to be coming out. Once again, we're coming to you all from Old North Bar. Shout out to Wes and team for letting us do this. You and I both know very well that the people here are wanting to enrich and build the community. They're really setting up a candle building thing right now, so they're going to be having music here later too. They're constantly just trying to provide a platform to people that are wanting to make this area cool and make people want to come and visit Lexington. And so we're really thankful for that. We have podcasts coming out with Nicholas Jamerson. We have episodes that are scheduled with Katie Topin and Justin Wells that will also be here. This episode will be coming out in the next couple weeks, and that'll hopefully be before his event that he has here. But Watkins, I love you, man. I appreciate you so much. Let's get one more tune. If you've been listening to What the Shuck, I love you all. Check out Watkins' music. Mr. Taylor Watkins is the man, coming from Old North Bar. Watkins.
And like I said earlier, some songs kind of resurface themselves, so I'm going to play Sweet Release off the first record. And this song, for anybody who needs a sweet release in their life or needs to take some time and reflect and just let go of some things, this goes out to you guys.
Looking for the key to open this door in front of me. And I found it underneath the devil's tree. And I'm growing, I'm tall enough to see. You gotta lose your mind to find it at peace. Your time wisely, then baby you will be released. Sweet release, sweet release, sweet release, sweet release, sweet release. I've been looking up at the clouds and I can't calm down. I never thought I'd be barefoot, with the mud beneath my feet, without sadness. Is it real at least to me? There's something that you stand to believe. You gotta lose your mind to find it at peace. If you use your time wisely, then baby you will be released. Sweet release, sweet release, sweet release, sweet release, sweet release. I've been looking up at the clouds and I can't calm down. Woo! Might as well head back to Maine. maybe drive on to Teton Valley. The mountain's been calling my name. When you feel it, say something. There's no truth in saying nothing. When someone